All right, Khadija.
Good evening, RCSD family. Welcome to those who are joining us for the first time, and welcome back for those who are joining us again. My name is Khadija Muhammad, and I am the Director for the Office of Parent Engagement. Just a few reminders before we start today's session. All cameras are turned off so that the speakers and ASL translators will be on the first screen for everyone. Participants were asked to submit questions in advance to reopening@rcsdk12.org, and you can continue to do so through all our parent sessions. Please visit www.rcsdk12.org/reopening for more details and future updates on the district's reopening plan. The objective for this forum is to provide information for families regarding the 2021 school year reopening. Today's session will begin with our Deputy Superintendent providing an overview of the current plan to reopen schools for the 2021 school year. Afterwards, we will begin our question and answers facilitated by myself. So without further ado, I bring to you our superintendent, Dr. Leslie Myers-Small.
Thank you, Khadija, and good evening to everyone. We are so pleased to have the opportunity to host a parent forum where we can provide information to you about our remote learning plan and the different aspects of it. The presentation is broken up into a couple of parts. We want to give just a general overview of some of our decision making and the factors that led to being all remote. And we also will talk about what learning looks like specifically for grades K2, then 3-6, and 7-12. We know that parents are an incredibly critical partner for us relative to the success of our 25,000 plus scholars in the Rochester City School District. And we are honored that each day you trust us with your most valued treasure, and that is of your child. Again, we recognize that this is certainly it's a unique way to begin the school year, but I am confident, and all of us in the Rochester City School District are very confident that we will be successful in a remote environment. Deputy Superintendent Melody Martinez Davis will take you through the presentation. And then there are many of us here from Central Office who are very excited and ready to take your questions. It's our goal for tonight to be incredibly informative, and we look forward to responding to your questions. Deputy Superintendent Martinez Davis, I turn it over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Myers-Small, for this wonderful opportunity to come together and be able to address our RCSD family and our RCSD community. So as you know, we did submit a reopening plan to New York State on July 31st. The New York State Education Department had directed districts to base plans on its guidance documents provisions. We needed to have assurances that as a school district, we are able to provide students with teaching and learning, communication, family and community engagement, health and safety, child nutrition, information about transportation, social emotional well-being, school extracurricular and interscholastic activities and information about that, attendance and chronic absenteeism, technology and connectivity, and bilingual education in world languages. So our plan for teaching and learning was based on 3 scenarios that New York State Education Department was requiring of all school districts. The first scenario is, what does it look like if you bring all your students, your entire student population back for in-person learning? We also had a plan for hybrid, remote learning and in-person learning, a combination of both. And the hybrid was going to be for pre-K through 4 and remote learning for 5 through 12th grade. And then we also submitted a plan in case we, as a school district, decided to use remote learning for all students pre-K through 12. Now, on August 7th, Governor Cuomo announced the levels of COVID-19 were low enough to open schools in New York State. He also required that all districts post remote learning, testing, and contact tracing plans online. Governor Cuomo wanted all school districts to schedule 3 sessions for smaller districts, and in our case, we're part of the Big 5. So we were required to schedule 5 discussion sessions or parent forums like this one tonight for parents and caregivers before August 21st. And we also had to have a discussion with our staff, which happened today, Wednesday, August 19th. So given the criteria around testing and contact tracing, our district has elected to utilize the remote learning plan that we submitted to the state for the first 10 weeks for all students pre-K through 12. The decision was made out of an abundance of caution to ensure the health and safety of all our students and our staff. Now, we had done a survey for our families of K through 4 because parents for the hybrid model also had a choice of going 100% remote learning. And we knew and understood that many parents had concerns about sending their children to school. So we had offered that 100% remote learning option. And as of last Friday, we had feedback for K through 4 families, and a majority of parents, 60% as of last Friday, had chosen that learning option for their children within the hybrid model of learning. Now, an urban district of this size has many unique challenges like transportation. As you know, buses are an extension of the classroom, which leads to challenges when socially distancing the number of students we typically transport is not possible. Most notably, the CDC has indicated there's increasing evidence that some ethnic minority groups are being disproportionately affected by COVID-19. So that's why we decided to do 100% learning for all our students. And I know that many of you are wondering, what does that look like? What does that mean? So our remote learning is going to have 2 components. One of the components is the synchronous learning. And synchronous learning is when the teacher and the students are connected virtually at the same time, simultaneously. And the student is working with the teacher, the student is working with other peers, other classmates. This is going to happen via Teams, Google Meet, or Zoom. We also are going to be providing all our students asynchronous learning. And asynchronous learning is learning that happens not while the student is connected with the teacher or other peers. The student proceeds through the materials and work at his or her own pace and at the family schedule. So synchronous learning, think about you're working with your teacher, you're working with classmates. Asynchronous is when you're working independently on your own. So for pre-K through 6, we are going to have weekly instruction, which is going to be provided using a modified schedule. That's going to include large and small group instruction, as well as independent learning opportunities. Large and small group time will focus directly on ELA, or English Language Arts, and mathematics. There's going to be a component of social emotional learning and social emotional development every day for our students, while social studies and science are going to be embedded within the day and within English and math. Independent learning experiences will supplement group learning experiences. Our elementary teachers will communicate the students and families prior to the start of each week. Every effort will be taken to be as flexible as possible while maintaining the equity of access to the instructional program. Now, for our 7th through 12th students and learners, students will follow their typical class schedule to ensure consistency and continuity of instruction, eliminating conflicts, build natural breaks for lunch throughout the day, and retain planning time for our teachers. Class periods adjusted to allow for a screen time break, and transition time between classes will also be built within that schedule. There will be a combination of large and small group instruction and independent learning each week. Related services and social emotional support will be provided either in real time or through the independent learning. In 7th through 12th grade, each class will begin with a group experience that includes community building time, attendance, and setting expectations for the daily learning via learning targets. Group learning opportunities for students can be recorded for families to access at a later time if their schedule prevents students from participating during the scheduled time. Independent learning experiences will supplement group learning experiences. And again, every effort will be taken to be as flexible as possible while maintaining the equity of access to the instructional program. So the first day of school for our students is September 14th, and that was approved last night by our Board of Education. The hours for our elementary schools, all elementary schools in the district while we're on remote learning, will be from 9 in the morning to 3:30 p.m. Our secondary school hours will be from 8:30 in the morning till 3:30 p.m. We have also moved all superintendent's conference days to the beginning of the school year. So the first 4 days in September 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th, will be devoted to professional development for our teaching staff to fortify our instruction. So to date, I am happy to report that the Rochester City School District has made Chromebooks available to students in grades 5 through 12 for the 2021 school year, has also provided MiFi devices to families without internet accessibility and availability. Now, the Rochester City School District will assure that every K through 12 student who lacks reliable connectivity has the opportunity to access high-speed broadband with MiFi devices. We're also planning to distribute Chromebooks to students in grades K through 4 from their home schools through the start of the school year in September. MiFis will be distributed to students in grades K through 12 that lack reliable internet service. Now, we want to continue communicating with our families, and we want our families to be engaged in partnership. So we will be providing you with the most updating information through our website, which you see here on the screen, rcsdk12.org/reopen. We will also be utilizing our robocall system and social media to share information with all our families. New Power School Parent Portal app will be released soon, and that is an app that you can upload to any of your smartphones so that you can connect with your teachers and look at students' grades and see how your child is doing. And you can reach out to your child's school to update contact information if needed. It is very important for all our families. If you have a new email, if you have a new phone, if you have a new address, to contact your child's school so that we can ensure that we have your most updated information so that you're not missing our robocalls and other pertinent information that we may have for you. School meals are still available for students at the following locations that you see here on the screen. And we are going to continue to offer food distribution to students at selected sites, which will be determined and shared with everyone. But right now, I am happy to announce that we have over 20 of those food distribution sites. And we do have our Chief of Operations here with us tonight to answer any questions that you emailed prior to us related to that. Resources and referrals are available to address mental health, behavior, and emotional needs of students, faculty, and staff when school reopens. K through 6 will have a social emotional learning component to their daily class in late school for 15 to 20 minutes on Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. 6 through 12 will also have a social emotional learning check and connect. That will also be Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday for the first 20 minutes every day. This will provide teachers an opportunity to check in and connect with the student and build social, emotional, and resiliency skills. Unfortunately, our athletic events and practices are canceled until further notice, but we will continue to update all our families and students on this area, which I know is very important to many of our athletes. Attendance will be taken daily, period by period on PowerSchool, which is our student management system. And a student will be marked present if they complete their daily assignment, either online or offline. If a student has a daily check-in, a two-way communication with the appropriate teacher, they will also be marked present. Simply not logging in virtually is not a sufficient reason for considering a student absent. If there's no contact with the student or parent, or there's no evidence of the student engaging online, the student will be marked absent. However, when a student is unable to participate in live instruction, teachers can use other methods of contacting for counting attendance. School personnel must attempt to make contact before marking a student absent. And a teacher may change a student's attendance based on evidence of work by the student. RCSD will continue to support our bilingual students and English language learners by providing remote learning models and plans consistent with the student's grade level and the instructional plan for each of the students. So we will continue with our English language learners push-in and pull-out services. We have partners with our city of Rochester, with our art centers. They will be open and they will run learning labs for students in grades K through 6 at the different locations that you see on the screen. These learning labs will be open from 8 to noon. There are 2 sessions, 8 to 10 and 10 to 12, where parents and students can come in, seek help, log in for synchronous instruction at that time, and they will also have physical activities for students. Breakfast and lunch will be provided at the art centers. So on August 24th, we're going to begin mailing access codes for the new PowerSchool Parent Portal app to all our families and caregivers. On September 1st, we will start mailing schedules to all our parents. Again, we will have 4 days of staff professional development. And that's going to be from September 8th to the 11th because we want to fortify our instruction. September 14th will be the new first day for all our students. And our school calendars will be mailed home in September to reflect the most recent changes and dates to all our families. As a district, we're going to continue reevaluating this all remote learning decision through the first 10 weeks of school. Dr. Myers-Small is going to be working with the Monroe County Health Department on contact tracing and testing for when school resumes in person. And she will also be providing weekly updates. Mrs. Mohammed, I leave you now to start our round of questions.
Thank you, Deputy Superintendent.
Khadijah, if you don't mind, I need to have Chief Keisha Morgan just give some information on special education. That's something that is critically important, and that was actually one of the areas that was not on the first slide, so we want to make sure that that is covered, and she is excited and ready to go to make sure that that update is provided. So Chief Keisha Morgan, thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent, and good evening, parents and community. Very excited to be here and to share information about how we have been planning for our students with disabilities. So each student with a disability in our Rochester City School District will have an individualized distance learning plan that is written to reflect how the district will implement the student's special education programming and related services in the remote learning model. Each student with a disability has a case manager, and the individualized distance learning plan will be developed with the case manager and in collaboration with the parent. So as a parent, you will be able to speak to the best way to that we will be able to meet your child's needs during this remote learning period. And that will be incorporated in the distance learning plan. Related services, speech language, OT, PT, occupational therapy, physical therapy, psychological counseling will all be delivered through via telepractice as outlined on your child's IEP. So we are prepared to deliver all of the services for your child that's on the IEP through distance learning plans. Thank you.
Thanks, Keisha.
All right, we will now begin our question and answer session. The first question will be to our superintendent. Will families need to sign up in advance for learning labs at the R centers? And in addition, will students that attend non-RCSD schools but live within the district be able to access learning labs?
So let's take that question in two parts. We are currently working on the process with the Rochester City School District because we want to make sure that we obviously observe the distancing guide, all the CDC guidelines relative to the classroom learning labs. So we'll work on a process. I actually was on the phone this morning with the city of Rochester, so we continue to unfold that. And then the second part of the question, I'm sorry.
The second part is, will students that attend non-RCSD schools but live within the district be able to access learning labs?
Sure. So they can access the center because they're Rochester City School District. They live in the city of Rochester. As far as the learning labs are concerned, I'm going to say no at this point, but I will get a final answer to that because our children are going to be logging in and interacting with their teachers synchronously and doing asynchronous work. So I will double check that, but I would say no.
Thank you. This question is going to be for our IM&T department, Mr. Vanderwater. How is the district going to guarantee security in Zoom classes so there are no Zoom bombs?
That is a fantastic question. The way that we prevent that is by not having open Zoom meetings. We roster all of our students and staff through our student management system, and that ensures that only students and or staff that are running the meetings have access to those meetings. When people come into a meeting, into a Zoom meeting, they're going to be coming into a waiting room. When a teacher is running a meeting, that teacher then will allow students into the whole group meeting. So once the teacher sees the student in the waiting room, they'll be permitted into the classroom for synchronous instruction.
Thank you, Mr. Vanderwater. The next question is for Dr. Hooper. Will pre-K programming in the CBOs follow a model similar to the district pre-K centers?
Well, thank you. Yes, we are required to follow a similar model in all of our pre-K programs to make them equitable. So if we select a particular model right now, that would be the virtual model, then that would be the same model that our agencies would be expected to implement.
Thank you, Dr. Hooper. The next question will be towards the superintendent. How will you monitor the capacity at the learning labs? What happens once the established capacity is reached? Will students be turned away?
So yes, we have to, we do have to, in the learning labs, adhere to the CDC guidelines, but there are other areas in the center that can be used. So the students can still participate in the R Center and be throughout the R Center. And then say again the first part, I apologize.
Nope, I will break them up. And the first part was once it gets to the established capacity, will students be turned away, and how will those notifications, so to speak, be made?
I think that's why we have to have a process to know how many students can be in the labs and determine that sign up, so we don't have that confusion.
Thank you. And just to follow up to that, it's another R Center question.
Okay.
The question is, can a child attend an R Center 5 days a week? Yes.
Yes. Just because we are having real time or synchronous, and then asynchronous or independent work time on Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays, with that Wednesday being asynchronous, students can absolutely participate 5 days a week.
Thank you, Superintendent.
You're welcome.
The next question will be to the school chiefs. The question is, will textbooks be available for pickup or delivery to go along with the Chromebooks?
Good evening to our families. Thank you for that question. So right now we have been discussing how we can deliver our items to our students. Specifically in K through 4, we're working on creating boxes, learning boxes for our students, where we will have a process at our schools for parents to receive those materials along with their Chromebook, as well as if there's a need for students to have textbooks, that we will develop a process even in our high schools to ensure that our students have the materials and resources that they need in their homes to be successful.
Thank you, Dr. Green. The next question is to the superintendent. Will parents have the option to send children to school after the 10 weeks?
Will there be
an option to send children to school after the 10 weeks? So the question is more or less, depending on the 10 weeks afterwards, say we do in person, will parents have the option to still choose to keep their child remotely at home?
Absolutely. This whole process of reopening is about parent and student choice. So we will be monitoring those first 10 weeks to see, might we be able to transition to hybrid? But if parents want to remain in remote learning, that is fine.
Thank you, Superintendent. The next question is to Dr. Hooper. And Mr. Vanderwater can weigh in on this as well. Will preschool students be given a technology device to participate in remote learning?
Well, let me share what I know.
So I can start that off and then I'll defer to, oh, I'm sorry, Robin, go ahead.
That's okay. Why don't you start off because it'll make more sense what I have to share if you talk first.
Very good. So the district has actively providing devices, or will be providing devices to all of our students in grades K through 12. And that includes MiFis for students that need home connectivity. We do not, as a district right now, have devices set aside for our pre-K students, but it's something that we've actively been working on. And I'm going to let Robin Hooper take it from here.
Well, we've realized for a while how essential this need is, and we actually telephone surveyed many of our parents to find out, exactly what their needs were. So I've been pursuing funding. We did receive some funding through the United Way for about 200 devices. We're trying to get more. Also, Dr. Morris has been working to secure some funding for iPads for some of our pre-K students. So we are working very hard to do this because we weren't part of that big grant initiative that didn't cover the pre-K grade. So we're seeking other funding to be able to do that and doing everything we can. More information to come on this, but we recognize how important it is, and it's a constant work in progress. We're working on it all the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hooper and Mr. Vanderwater. The next question is for our transportation department. Will RCSD transportation still be assisting to transport high schoolers to private and charter schools that are open?
Yes, good evening, everyone. We will be transporting all students that are going to private, parochial, charter, and urban suburban schools during this time when we're in a virtual learning environment.
Thank you, Mr. Schmidt. And a follow-up question for transportation. If and when we do open after 10 weeks, how will you safely transport high school students on the RTS bus?
We've actually worked with all of our contract providers to ensure that first and foremost, that all the buses are appropriately cleaned and disinfected. Second, that the students will be socially distanced on the particular buses, and then also ensuring that all students will be wearing a mask on a bus. With those safeguards in place, that our students will be safely taken to school and certainly taken home in the afternoon.
Thank you, Mr. Schmidt. The next question is to our superintendent. Why were we given a choice and a plan and then it changed?
I think that's a great question. And I was asked that of the media. One of the things I think is really important to know is that this process is constantly evolving. We know that COVID-19 has been, the spread has been very unpredictable. So at that time that I made the decision for the July 31st submission to the New York State Education Department, we had a certain set of information and we felt comfortable at that time. But since that time, and when I pivoted and changed my direction, we had been watching what school districts across the country, we're a member of an organization called the Council of Great City Schools. So it's large urban school districts. And we were seeing what was happening with many of our school district partners across the state, and many of them were shifting from a hybrid model to a solely remote platform. We also were concerned after we heard the governor's remarks, and when he was talking about contact tracing and testing, being such a large school district, that gave me pause, or gave me an additional concern. And as I've said, the focus really needs to be on teaching and learning and instruction. And so rather than try to have to maneuver through many of the health and safety components that certainly other school districts in our county are dealing with, but are much smaller, we wanted to solely focus on instruction. And therefore, the decision was made to go solely remote, or 100% remote, for at least the first 10 weeks of school.
Thank you, Superintendent.
Mm-hmm.
The next question is for our school chiefs. Why would students not be attending virtual school during their school building's normal hours? This seems to set children up for a rough transition at the 10-week mark to go from 9 a.m. elementary start to a 7:30 a.m. start.
Good evening, families. That's a great question. We've abbreviated some of the times that students will be engaged on online learning. So we adjusted the schedules so that we can maximize the time, as well as some of our staff that are shared across buildings to ensure consistency, as well as, allow families time in the morning to prepare for the online learning.
Thank you, Dr. Peluso. The next question is for our superintendent. Will I receive a calendar? Will we get something in the mail with instructions for my kids so that we know where to log in?
Well, the calendar, these are actually two separate issues. Yes, we are working on the calendar. And again, we are very grateful to the Board of Education. Just last night, they approved the revision to the calendar. So now our communications department is working on that piece. And then Glenn's team is working with the chiefs and the principals to develop the login credentials. Glenn, if you don't mind coming on, and if you can at least topically talk about what the next steps are relative to that, I would appreciate it.
I'm sorry. Could I just have that last piece repeated to me, please, and then I can address it?
The credentials. When will families get login credentials so they know when to log in and how?
Yes.
Credentialing will happen. That's all going to be held within PowerSchool, and will happen. That information will happen, I believe, by the end of next week. We'll start having those things rostered, and being able to communicate with families those credentials so that they can log in and view. Thank you for repeating that question.
You're welcome. Thank you, Glenn.
The next question is for our school chiefs. Will uniform policies be suspended for the year, even if students return?
So, Khadijah, it's Sheila Webster. I'm not able to open my video. If one of the communication team members could help me with that, that would be great. And I will respond by saying good evening to all of our families. And school uniforms are something that every school will need to examine a little bit further as they open the school year, as well as transition into the second part of the school year, or whenever it is that we open. So I'm going to say that we'll have to work very closely with our school communities to assess their policies and next steps.
Thank you, Mrs. Webster. The next question is going to be different parts. It could be answered by our school chiefs as well as our IMT department, Mr. Vanderwater. I have a question in regards to the different platforms and websites that will be used. Have they been tested to show if they will perform with so many people utilizing them at once? That's the first part of the question.
Okay, so yes, absolutely. The learning management that we're using to deliver instruction to our students are very robust, used nationwide. For example, I believe I'm cutting in now. In grades pre-K through second, we'll be using Seesaw, the premium version of Seesaw. In grades 3 through 12, we'll be utilizing the Google Classroom. Again, the Google environment is very robust. And for some of our students in grades 9 through 12, we're going to be utilizing our learning management system, RCSD e-learning, which is hosted by Agilix Buzz.
Okay. And the second part of that question is, what is the plan if systems crash while students are logging in, or if students cannot log in?
Okay, very good question. We experience about 99%, over 99% uptime and less than 1% downtime throughout throughout an academic year. And again, those systems are used heavily during the academic day. If a student runs into login issues, they're able to call the 262-8700 number, and there we have an operator that'll be able to take in information and provide support. What will probably happen at that point, one of our instructional technology teachers will reach out to that family and help that student with any login issues they have at that time.
Thank you, Mr. Vanderwater. The next question, and probably the next couple of questions, they're worded differently. They are specific, but the basis of it would be going to the school chiefs. My daughter is going to 4th grade this upcoming year. When we went virtual, the majority of homeschooling was my daughter just the continuation of working on Zern and Lexia. There were packets sent home weekly, but there was no further education of 3rd grade for her. I'm wanting to know, is she just moving on to the 4th grade, or will she finish her 3rd grade education while continuing on with 4th grade?
This is a great question, and a question that I think we all ask as parents across the country, not just in RCSD. Our teaching and learning department, as well as New York State, has kind of examined the standards that students need to be taught in the scope and sequence of what they needed to learn at the end of last year and what they need to learn in the beginning of this year. And we're combining as much information as possible so that we're able to take advantage of some of those missed learning opportunities that happen from March to June, so that we're able to catch students up so that they continue on their appropriate grade level instruction.
Thank you, Dr. Peluso. So in turn, this question is also in regards to the learning. Will children be given remedial work for the beginning of the year? I don't want my child to fall behind because he hasn't been able to learn everything he was supposed to in the classroom when schools closed back in March. A lot of in-person learning was missed, and inner city children and families have so much stacked against them already.
That's a great question and a follow-up to what Dr. Peluso just explained. The intentionality of the schedules that we have designed for K through 2, 3 through 6, and 7 through 12 is exactly to combat that, right? We don't want our children to be just remediating, but to be able to pace with acceleration, right? So to be able to catch up some of the standards and skills that may have been lost, but also move forward and gain the new learning. So the schedules are set up in that manner. So there's a combination of synchronous, asynchronous, and small group work, and or combinations of opportunities for teachers to collaborate and devise units together. The instructional leadership team in our T&L department are devising pacing charts as well as lesson designs that better support that. So to summarize, it's really about fortifying and lifting that remote learning that supports both new learning and catch-up learning, and to really focus on moving forward and not be stuck in the past.
Thank you, Mrs. Webster. The next question is for our Chief of Special Education, Ms. Morgan. If I request a CSC referral, how will this happen this year?
That's a great question. Thank you. So CSC referrals can be emailed to your building principal or assistant principal. I would just say principal just for consistency. You can email the principal. You can call and let the principal know about your desire for a request for a referral, or of course you can always reach out to the Department of Special Education and we can process it that way. But I think the best bet is to contact the building, and the building will make sure that they document that and send that to my office.
Thank you, Ms. Morgan. The next question will be for our Deputy Superintendent or a representative from our Multilingual Education Department. Are parents being communicated with in their home language through video, robocalls, and print? If not, when and how will this happen?
Yes, that's a great question. So a couple of things to answer that. Robocalls should be going out in the family's native language. If you are not receiving those robocalls, I would encourage the families to call their children homeschooled, just to make sure that we have the correct number for you on our system. If you go on our website, many of our documents can be translated right away into your language. There's a tab that you would click, and then the entire document is translated. Principals should be sending information in the language as well. And I know maybe if Mrs. Green, she can give us a little bit of information on how the principals do that. And we're actually tonight testing our system to make sure that this forum can be translated for families. And we're hoping that the forum on Friday can be simultaneously translated. So we're working on those systems very quickly. So Mrs. Green, can you elaborate a little bit about how principals send information to families in their native language, please?
Yes, I will. So as we know that our families in our schools, in our bilingual programs are certainly getting the emails and letters translated. In terms of our other languages, we are working with our multilingual department so that we can translate those letters as well. Also, our new system that will do robocalls and text messages has a feature on it that will also translate in multiple languages. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Green and
You're welcome.
Deputy Superintendent. The next question is going to be for our superintendent. How is the urban suburban program affected by RCSD's decision to start remotely? That's the first part.
Okay, let's take that first part. So I actually sit on the governance committee, and this very topic was brought up. So students who are in the Rochester City School District, and if they're going to any of the suburban schools, do have the opportunity to either go fully remote through their school district, through the school district that they're participating in, or they participate in whatever model that they have chosen that that school district has. If it does involve any in-person schooling, as Mike shared earlier, our Chief of Operations, transportation will be provided. It will be helpful for that decision to be known to us so we can make the necessary arrangements, but we will abide by what the choice is of the parent in urban suburban.
Thank you, Superintendent.
And then there was a second part, right?
Yes. Should we be following RCSD or do we follow the plan for the suburban school?
That's individual choice. That really is up to what works up to each individual family and what works best for you. So that's something that I can't answer. I've been very adamant about the importance of parent choice. And so that's a conversation that the family should have. And you need to make the best decision based on, certainly multiple factors, your work schedule, and just other good conversations that you should have. But that's a decision that you need to make in your family.
Thank you, Superintendent. The next question will be for our school chiefs. However, IMT may want to chime in on this. Will K through 6 Zoom sessions be recorded so that when parents get home, we can have access to the lessons or videos for that day to assist our children?
I'll start with that answer. Teachers will have the ability to record their Zoom lessons, and then would also have the ability to post those links in Google Classroom so that students that are not able to participate synchronously could potentially participate asynchronously.
And to piggyback off of what Mr. Vanderwater had said, there will be other opportunities for teachers to support students that weren't in instruction. They could use their instructional coaches, they could use recorded lessons, they could use their office hours to engage students that need the additional support.
Thank you. And just a quick follow-up for Mr. Vanderwater, as we are making sure we're defining terms for our audience, you mentioned asynchronous and synchronous. Can you just briefly explain that for me, please?
Sure. A good example is this meeting is happening synchronously. People are participating. There could be potential engagement back and forth between all of the participants. Asynchronous instruction would happen at a time when maybe a teacher posts a lesson with a video, something that a student could engage in at a time that is convenient for that student to do the work. So again, that's not something that's happening live. That's something that's happening while still online. It could be happening during a time when class isn't in session.
Thank you, Mr. Vanderwater.
Yeah, I just wanted to add this, just going back to the videotaping of classes, because I want to just make sure that's clear. That is voluntary. Not every teacher is expected to record their lesson. If that's something that they choose to do, that is optional, but we're not mandating that teachers record their lesson. So I just want to make sure that's clear.
Thank you, Superintendent. The next question is going to be to our transportation department. Will transportation be provided to the R Centers for Learning Lab?
Good afternoon once again. As of right now, there will not be transportation provided to the recreation centers, but they are, the way they're positioned around the city, most families should be able to have access to one of the R Centers that are offering the learning labs. My understanding is every R Center will have the learning labs available to them, but right now, no transportation to the R Centers.
Thank you, Mr. Schmidt. The next question is for our superintendent. What does the RCSD feel is going to be so different in 10 weeks that will allow kids to return?
A couple of things. Certainly, that's not an absolute. That's just a benchmark. We said minimally it would be 10 weeks, and we will monitor at multiple intervals, to determine that. But we need to know what the COVID-19, what the testing levels are, the infection rates. We need to see how things have played out across the county with our suburban counterparts, and we need to see what is happening across the state. We're also a member of the Big Five, and the Big Five means the 5 largest school districts in the state of New York. The largest district with 1 million students, and it's the largest district actually in the entire country, is New York City. Then Buffalo is the second largest. Rochester City School District is the third. Syracuse City School District is the 4th largest, and Yonkers is the 5th largest. So we have regular conversations, and we communicate quite often. We actually had a meeting on Sunday afternoon, the 5 of us, with our newly appointed interim commissioner of education, and the very topic was remote learning and our plans. So this is a fluid process. We will continue to monitor, we'll continue to adjust, and the goal or the important piece here is that we will make sure that everyone, both internal and external stakeholders, have ample time so they know what the decision is for next steps.
Thank you, Superintendent. And this next question is for you.
Okay.
Why did the district move the start date by using all 4 superintendent conference days?
Sure. So we obviously need to take some time and make sure that our teachers and other staff have the professional development that they need in order to make this as successful as possible. So we wanted to make sure that we built time up front so that Tuesday through Friday, our staff will be involved in intensive, very specifically tailored professional development. So we sent a survey out to our staff, asking them to identify what their needs are, what type of learning platforms that they were comfortable with. We also asked questions like, would you be willing to lead a session or to help another colleague through? So we want to make this as meaningful and as successful as possible. And we needed to ensure that our teachers have the professional development that would help them with not only remote learning, but also technology needs.
Thank you, Superintendent.
You're welcome.
The next question is for our Teaching and Learning Department, our Deputy Superintendent. Will there still be advanced learning opportunities for students performing above grade level?
I'm sorry, Khadija. So for the teaching and learning, right? So on behalf of Dr. Morris, who is the Deputy Superintendent for Teaching and Learning, yes, there will always be enrichment opportunities for our students, whether we are in old-fashioned school, brick and mortar, or we are online. That is the art of differentiation. So our teachers will be differentiating for students within their classes, whether it's through the on live, the synchronous instruction or asynchronous, to meet students where they're at and continue to push them to move even forward. So was that the question? Because I know Dr. Morris. Okay, so yeah, so differentiation will continue happening to ensure that our students are pushed to the next level, even if we are on remote learning.
Thank you, Deputy Superintendent. The next question is to our health and safety team. If schools reopen, how would you implement the CDC guidelines to keep students safe?
Hi, sorry. Good evening, everyone. I had a second there to get my camera open. That is really explained in our health and safety plan that's available online. There are so many details involved in that I could take up a large portion of that. But fundamentally, we would be implementing mask wear as required, social distancing, and all the other recommendations that are there. And Mike, if you had anything to add.
Yeah, Khadijah, just so I make sure we answer this completely, can you just repeat the question one more time?
If schools reopen, how would you implement the CDC guidelines to keep students safe?
So the only items I would add to that are making sure that we thoroughly clean and disinfect buildings after school and before school in the morning, and make sure we wipe down and clean common areas throughout the day, everything from countertops to door handles and so forth. Making sure that we have installed the appropriate PPE for classrooms, such as sneeze guards or shields between where a student might be sitting if they're both working at a table. In addition, making sure all of our teachers have all the PPE that they need in order to teach class safely, which may in some cases require face shields, gloves, and masks and so forth. All those materials have been resourced and are ready to go. And I think, as the superintendent said, right now the focus is on instruction, but if and when we're called to come back to school and do classrooms in more of a hybrid model, then we'll be ready to implement those safety measures.
Thank you, Mr. Schmidt and Ms. Darby. The next question will be for our Chief of Special Education. And just keep in mind that some of these questions are definitely going to repeat, but we would be remiss if we did not go ahead and ask them again and make sure that we get all of that information. How will services be handled for kids with IEPs? Will they miss class?
So that's a great question. Thank you. So I think that we're talking about related services, because I hear missing class. So I think that's the type of service that we're talking about. So I'll answer it through that lens. So related services are going to be delivered like they are when we're in face-to-face instruction. So our related service providers will work with our teachers and develop a schedule that best meets the needs of our students. So through this model, we know that we have 30 minutes of that synchronous instruction, that whole group. We have another 30 minutes of small group instruction and 30 minutes of asynchronous instruction. So our related service providers will do their best to try to provide services during that asynchronous time and that small group time, as to not interrupt that whole group synchronous instruction. So they will do their best to do that. But as usual, they will work alongside our teachers, our gen ed and our special ed teachers, and find the best time to provide services to our students.
And just to follow up to that, Ms. Morgan, can it be mandated that teachers record the lessons for viewing later in that case?
So record the classroom teacher record the lesson. I'm not sure about mandating our classroom teachers to record the lesson, but we certainly can work with our teachers and our support staff to ensure that our students get any instruction that they missed. So we have a lot of staff, and we'll make sure that they get that they have access to any of the instruction that they miss.
Thank you, Ms. Morgan. The next question is going to be to our school chiefs. If a student is struggling with work, how will they receive assistance or tutoring?
Great question. So first thing we want to do is ensure that there is constant and consistent communication between parent and school, right? Most notably the teacher. So the teacher is the first point of addressing any instructional needs, and then they will work in conjunction with their principals and teaching teams. So most of the schools have at least 1 or 2 people who can support with intervention and or additional supports. Those teachers have been built into the schedule, and they will be able to provide the differentiated support in collaboration with their teachers. So I'm coming back to say, I think we'll do some very careful assessment of students without taking away from instructional time, grouping the students to meet their specific needs. And then it's that constant follow-up from the teacher and connecting to the parent to make sure that we are able to close the gaps that our students may be experiencing.
Thank you, Mrs. Webster. The next question is towards our teaching and learning department, specifically our specials, art, music. Will virtual learning incorporate enrichment classes such as art and music? My students went to a summer program, and their summer program encompassed many enrichment classes, which made the whole experience fun for them.
Good evening. We will still be offering the full spectrum of our fine arts electives, including physical education and library as well. So everything you would expect to have face-to-face will still be coming to students in a remote environment, including our instrumental lessons as well. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is going to be for our pre-K department, Dr. Hooper. What will the pre-K virtual learning look like? Will they have to log on all day? Will there be activities mailed out to the parents to supplement their learning?
Well, let me answer that. Our schedule for the pre-K full day learning will be a combination of online learning in a morning meeting that will start the day for about 15 minutes, and that would be with the teacher and classmates. And next would be a small group, either in ELA or math, and that would also be about 15 minutes, whole group. We would call that synchronous instruction. The children are all doing the same thing at the same time. So they would have 2 of those groups a day, ELA and math. But we do recognize that young children should not be on the screen for long periods of time at once. So these are broken up during the day. And there's also a large group time, which is about 15 minutes. So total, there are 4 15-minute segments, 1 large group and 2 small group per day, plus the morning meeting. And in addition to that, there would be learning materials sent home. Specifically, we're planning for an initial pack of materials to be provided for every child for learning at home that would have some of the basics that students would need, like crayons and scissors and glue and things of this nature. And then we would also look at providing some learning project kinds of materials during the course of the 10 weeks. So those would be used for the child to learn at home, not in the group or online, but to do some of the learning projects that are hands-on, because we need hands-on learning for this age group. In addition to that, there would be an hour of time for students and parents to contact the teacher. It might even be just a student wanting to share something like their favorite toy or a picture that they drew, or to have some few minutes to talk with the parent about what the child's doing and what progress they're making, or any suggestions the teacher can provide, that kind of thing. So it is a mix of online and learning at home through these hands-on projects. So the total online time per day would be more like along 2 hours. an hour with those 15-minute segments of small group, large group, and morning meeting. And then an hour of the open time for children, students, or their parents to contact the teacher with the hands-on project scheduled in between, and also recommending to the parent or caregiver that children be given at least 40 minutes of activity, either outdoors or in a bigger area where they can have large muscle movement. So that really is what we would say a pre-K day should look like. And those would be the resources that would be provided.
Thank you, Dr. Hooper.
You're welcome.
The next question is to our school chiefs. Will the online learning be more structured than it was back in March? Because that was very confusing and my kids did not get anything out of it.
So to begin with this question, I will refer back to the presentation where we talked about a structured day. And so that all of our students will be given a schedule that will encompass starting with social emotional learning, and then English instruction could happen next, which would be 30 minutes of synchronous, 30 minutes of independent work or asynchronous, and 30 minutes of group time. And so the entire day will allow for families to understand what the instruction is going to look like. It will include the times of the day that the instruction is happening. And so our students will have all of their core subjects throughout the day, as well as some aspect of their special subjects, such as art, music, physical education, and library. So the day will be very structured with some flexibility. Parents will be well aware of what that schedule will look like, and we will make sure that we have maximized the opportunity for our students to be successful and move forward.
Thank you, Dr. Green. The next question is to our superintendent. If in-person classes resume in November, would they resume after Thanksgiving break or before?
From what it looks like is that the 10 weeks falls around the 22nd or the 23rd of November. So again, we said exactly 10 weeks. So if we needed to make adjustments after Thanksgiving, we certainly could do that. But the way that the 10 weeks fall, it is around, I believe it's the 22nd or so of November. So we would have to look into seeing if we were going to extend it past that for just a couple days, if that would make sense. Logistically, we would make sure that we would communicate that ahead of time.
Thank you, Superintendent. And this next question is also for you. How is remote learning impacting the RCSD budget?
So right now, we know that in order to get prepared for what we thought was going to be hybrid, we had some savings because of being in remote learning. So we used it to buy PPE, masks and so on and so forth. But at this point, we haven't really fully been able to see the impact. We know that the Chrome, let me just outline what some of the quote unquote expenses have been and where they've come from. So the major expense at this point is our Chromebooks and our Chromebooks and our MiFi devices, which we obtained through very generous and philanthropic donations from the city, Rochester Community Foundation, and United Way. So we were able to do that. We're outfitting the rest of our scholars from kindergarten through third or fourth grade with existing Chromebooks that we currently have that we'll be pulling out of buildings to use. So right now, we haven't had additional expense. I mean, we're paying the salaries of folks who are working diligently on this. The R centers are a partnership and collaboration with the city of Rochester, so that is not an additional expense. And we also will be having student teachers predominantly from the College of Brockport, but from other colleges and universities, and that's no expense to us at this time at all.
Thank you, Superintendent. One more question for you. Will the state, city, or district offer subsidies for childcare?
The district certainly is not responsible for that, so I can say definitively that that would not be our responsibility. I need to say also that it's not something that we're not concerned about. I know that there were meetings this afternoon with the county, and we're working on to see how might we be able to support our families or provide resources to them and point them in the right direction. But as far as the district being able to provide a subsidy, that's not something that we are positioned to do. And Deputy Martinez Davis, that might be something you want to answer as well.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Myers. So if any parent needs assistance with trying to locate services, we do have on our website under COVID-19, there is a link for different resources, not resources that we per se provide, but resources in the community that our families can access. So at least that way they're not searching, the internet, but there's, we have provided a list there on our website for our parents, and they can always contact the Office of Parent Engagement that can help them navigate our website as well.
Thank you, Deputy Superintendent. The next question is going to be for our school chiefs. What tangible supports are being offered to families to facilitate their child's education? Will principals monitor instructional plans?
Our principals will continue to monitor instructional plans. They'll be in the classrooms conducting some walkthroughs to see what type of learning is going on and how they could best support their teachers and support the students on the learning. Our Wednesday professional development day will really focus on what the principals and parents and teachers are saying the supports needed are, and they will kind of tailor the professional development for that.
Thank you, Dr. Peluso. Next question is going to be for our teaching and learning department. How will virtual learning be tested? Will there be grades or pass or fail?
So right now we have a subcommittee that is working on putting all the different phases for grading. So that is a work in progress. We're hoping to have a finalized document that we can share with our families sometime soon, hopefully by next week. But we do have a team that is working on the components of grading. What is that going to look like? How do we grade engagement? How do we work that is submitted online? So that is something that our staff is working around the clock to put that together. So stay tuned for additional information on grading.
Thank you, Deputy Superintendent. The next question will be for Mr. Schmidt. How will students get breakfast and lunch for those who don't live within walking distance to the food distribution centers?
Yes, thank you once again. So we're working on a couple of models that we're hopefully going to be able to announce within the next week or so, taking into account the families that are not contiguously to the R centers. But please keep in mind that there are also, of the school sites that we're going to select, we are going to strategically select them around the city. So we will have certainly plenty of school food options within each zone of our district. But we also have to take into account some of the travel distances. So we're looking at a couple different options to provide food to our families and trying to make it as convenient as possible. So hopefully more to come by within the next couple of weeks.
Just to piggyback on what Mike said, what's important is we certainly know that food and nutrition is a basic need. And so we will do everything possible that we can to make it feasible and doable and accessible for our families. So that is very, very important to us.
Thank you. The next question is for our Chief of Special Education. My son has an IEP and can't do a lot of work on the computer. He requires paper and teacher help to do the work. How will this be possible?
Okay, thank you. That's a great question. So again, all of our students with disabilities will have an individualized distance learning plan. So on that plan, our case managers and our families will develop the IEP, the remote IEP, basically together. So during that discussion, that's when those type of things will come up. We'll talk about the preferred type of activities, the mode of access that best meets the needs of the student, and how we can develop supports that will meet the individualized needs of the student. So that would be the time when we talk about that. So of course we could have hard copies and learning packets and all type of creative things that we could do if the actual getting on the computer is not the best mode of access for learning for that student. So that would be something that would be developed in that DLP, and we're prepared to do that.
Thank you, Ms. Morgan. The next question is for Terry Orden, our Teaching and Learning Department. How soon will parents be given and have access to their children's curriculum and classes to be able to follow up with virtual learning?
Good evening, Rochester families. How are we this evening? So schedules will be made mailed the week of September 1st. And then as far as the curriculum, that's when students will also have access once they receive their schedules to get online, and teachers will be reaching out to them. So they will then have access that way, along with materials that we'll be putting on the website.
Thank you, Ms. Orden. So we have had a number of questions. Some have definitely repeated, but we wanted to make sure that we addressed all that we could, and we have run out of time for today. We still have 2 more parent sessions left, one for tomorrow evening, and then as well as Friday. At this time, I would like to first give a huge thank you to our parents for their patience as we work through the uncertainties of school reopening. Thank you for the opportunity to dialogue with you and answer some of the most pressing questions. We hope we have been able to provide clarity on the RCSD plan and will continue to communicate with families as updates become available. We ask that you continue to advocate for your children as they are your most prized possessions. Reach out to your building teams, the parent liaisons, homeschool assistants, teacher, principal, and other appropriate staff to assist you with any questions that may arise. We ask that you ensure we always have the most up-to-date contact information, including a phone number, email, and address, as we use many of these methods for contacting you. You can also find up-to-date information on our social media page at RCSD Parents or at RCSD NYS. Lastly, I want to turn it over to our superintendent of schools to go ahead and give us some short feedback and close out the evening.
Thank you, Ms. Muhammad. I appreciate it. I do want to thank our parents. I want to reiterate thanks to our parents and caregivers who joined us this evening. Just listening to all of the questions, they were so incredibly thoughtful. And I'm glad that we had the opportunity to host this venue to hopefully calm some of the concerns or anxieties that you have relative to remote learning. If for some reason we didn't get to your question, or if something was not answered to your satisfaction, please don't hesitate to reach out to certainly your child's school principal or program administrator. Don't forget that we have our phone number, the 262-8700 number, where we if we can't answer your question there, that we can certainly direct you to the proper person or staff member. I want to thank all of those who participated this evening. It truly takes an entire village to support our 25,000 plus students in the Rochester City School District. We had, what I saw were 2 board members who supported us tonight. We thank you for our commissioners who were here this evening. And we would be remiss if we did not thank our communications team, who, although you can't see them, they put the systems and processes in place to make sure that you all could see us and could interact with us. So certainly want to say thank you for their hard work and their dedication. Again, we're in this process together with you. Our goal is to ensure that your child is successful and has all of the resources available to him or her to ensure that they are successful. Thank you, everyone, and we hope that you have a great evening and that everyone stays safe. Have a good evening. Take care.